Hello and welcome to Unqualified Opinions. I'm Will Beiermann, joined by Paul Heires, and today we're going to be reacting to the college football playoffs first ranking set. Before we get into it, make sure you guys like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff, and of course, leave your own unqualified opinion in the comments down below. So, Paul, the College Football Playoff Committee has released the first set of rankings. So, obviously, AP poll, obsolete, coaches poll, gone. This is the one rankings to rule them all, Paul. I'm going to start with the question that will enrage you. How do you feel about Michigan State being over Ohio State? Because I feel like right off the bat, that's the first real head scratcher, this one, to some people.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell when you're just looking at wins and losses, right? But I think everyone agrees that Michigan State doesn't really look like the number 3 team in the country right now. And it's hard to see that they moved Cincinnati down to 6. I think we'll get into that a little bit later, but I don't know. I don't feel like a one-possession win, a comeback one-possession win against Michigan is worth that big of a jump. I think even the AP poll where they have them at 5 is still a little bit high for me on Michigan State. I think it really comes down to, is this a playoff team? I don't think it is right now. And, I mean, we'll see what happens later down in the season, but that's what I see when I see Michigan State at 3.
I would have to agree with that, absolutely. Now, the one thing I do like, and I'm sure you're a fan of as well, Oregon Ducks at number 4 over Ohio State.
Yeah, and I know that's probably what the playoff committee was looking at, that Oregon-Ohio State matchup. We knew that was going to be huge week 2 when that game happened. But once again, I don't know. Oregon, you look at their schedule, there's not a whole lot there. That loss to Stanford doesn't look that great. And you got to remember, they're playing in the Pac-12. So, we'll see. I think there's still hope for the Pac-12. There's still hope for Oregon. Obviously, they're at number 4, right? But I just don't see them. I mean, they're the only Pac-12 team that can make it at this point. I don't see them doing that.
They have to win out, and they have to win their conference championship game. That is the only situation where they still make it in. And then we're going to move right down to 6, which is really the hot button issue for most people. I think is the fact that Cincinnati, after being ranked, what was it? I think 2 at highest at some points in the AP poll, is now all the way down to 6. How do you feel about that, Paul?
Yeah, and some people are pointing fingers at the close win against Tulane, but come on.
I mean, Oklahoma also had a close win against Tulane.
Yeah, and, we if we're going to go through this, I mean, pretty much every team on here, except for those top 2, have a close win against a team that they probably should have blown out, right? And so it's like, well, where do you draw the line here? I think Cincinnati's win against Notre Dame should have been enough to give them the respect to at least be at number 5. But the fact that they're not even there is just like it. I saw the ESPN article when it first came out last night, and it said Cincinnati is insulted. I think that was a perfect explanation for what we see here. And, it's like I was going over the scenarios. Okay, so they're going to have Michigan State lose 2 more, Oregon lose 2 more, Ohio State lose 2 more, and then they're going to have to win every other game by 45 to have a chance. Like, at what point do we let these lower conference teams into the playoff? You know what I'm saying?
And it's still funny to me because that's what the playoffs were kind of made for. It was teams like Boise State or some past Cincinnati teams, too, that played well enough that you thought, okay, is it wrong that this undefeated Boise State team doesn't have a shot at the title? So we thought, the playoffs were supposed to fix that. So far, nothing there. We're going to hop over Oklahoma because I got a bigger question about the whole conference they're in. But first, we're just going to take a look at Wake Forest in the top 10 for the first time in school history. I believe you told me that they were the only Power 5 school that had not been in the top 10 at any point for football. So, congrats, Wake Forest. Good job, Sam Hartman. What would it take, do you think, for Wake Forest to make it there? Because they obviously do not have the blue blood pedigree to get popularity votes.
Well, and that is an official top 10 ranking because they're 10 in the AP. But yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about earlier this season. Wake Forest has taken care of business to this point. Now is where their schedule gets tough. They got North Carolina, I think Boston College, NC State, and Clemson. Their last 4 games. I don't think it's that order, but big tests, right? And obviously, we're not talking about top 5 teams here, but I think it's still enough that if they win out, they win their conference, right? You look at some of these top 4, top 5 teams, right? Michigan State plays Ohio State plays Michigan, and if Alabama and Georgia were to continue to win, they would end up playing each other in the championship. There's going to be some losses up here. If Wake Forest just keeps doing what they're doing, they keep winning games, they will get up there. They will get the respect that they deserve if they win out.
And that was my big question for you. North Carolina and Clemson and Boston College obviously aren't pushover teams. North Carolina State's still in the top 25. I mean, the only question I had was, would an undefeated Wake Forest team still get that respect? And I don't know. I mean, honestly, it's hard for me to see them winning out and going undefeated. But
well, yeah, and we talked about this a couple years ago with Minnesota. It's like if you're a top 5, I mean, if you're a Power 5 team and you go undefeated 13 weeks, you deserve at least a top 5 spot, if not a top 4 spot.
All right, and my last question for you today, Paul, before we wrap this one up is, we have Oklahoma at 8, Oklahoma State at 11, and Baylor at 12. Oklahoma is 9-0, undefeated. Oklahoma State and Baylor have a loss apiece. What is the Big 12's chances at having any team at all in the playoffs? Because you can obviously tell from looking at the rankings that Oklahoma, despite being 9-0, is not really getting the recognition or respect that I'm sure they feel they deserve. Do you think the best of the best out of the Big 12 is going to get a spot based on their own merit? If we're stacking them up against a Big 10 champ, a really good Wake Forest team, assuming they win at least all but one game, like, does the Big 12 have the reputation anymore that they can guarantee a one-loss Big 12 champion makes it?
I think they do. It's an interesting question because it's close. And, if you're talking about 2 one-loss SEC teams, if Oregon wins outright, there's a lot of situations where they don't make it. But I think if you're Oklahoma and you win, if you go 13-0, you should be in, right? And it's a Power 5 conference. These are quality teams, right? They're not in the top 10 for no reason. But they need to start acting like it, because if they don't start playing this well, they're not going to make it to 13-0.
You got anything else, Paul? Any more comments, questions?
I just wanted to touch on going back to the Group of 5 conferences. We talked about Cincinnati. I just want to point out we had a viewer that wanted me to shout out UTSA. They're playing UTEP this week, and I feel bad because.
Yeah, they got bounced out of the rankings outright.
They move up 7 spots, 16th in the AP, and they're not even on the college football playoff rankings.
Well, you know what? To that viewer, I'm proud to say that Unqualified Opinions is pro UTSA. Go Roadrunners.
And I don't know, just like we can get into this at some other time, but it's at what point do you just... Like, you're UTSA, right? You win every single game. At what point do you get that respect? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, I'm sure that's why they're joining the American Conference now.
You win every... Like, they're not even looking at, like, scores at this point. They're just looking at teams.
Yeah.
You win every game 90-0, and you're still not putting... Like, at what point do you get to say, I'm a champion... Not of just a conference, but a national champion.
I mean, even the Group of 5 has its levels. American and Mountain West, an undefeated American team, an undefeated Mountain West team, I think has they're not going to get a great shot because of how Power 5 biased we still see the committee being, but an undefeated Mountain West American team is going to get a lot more respect than Conference USA, MAC, Sun Belt.
And I understand that, but I'm just saying, like, you look at like FCS, they have a championship, right? There's a level of play they play at where there's a championship.
Yeah.
Right. There's not for a non-Power 5 conference team. And you look at UCF a couple years ago, they didn't get an opportunity. So what are these teams playing for? Right? Are they just playing for a New Year's Six bowl? Right? Where they could compete with a second-tier SEC team like Auburn or something?
I mean, sadly, that's what they're doing right now. So you know what? Is it time to say, it, group of 5 championship? Something like that?
Either that or expand it. I mean, it's really not that hard. And
12-team
I want to
playoff.
bring this up, like, go back to episode 14. I made a hot take that said they're not going to expand the playoff for another 10 years. It's been 2 years. Still not really any improvement since then. I don't want my hot take to be right, but at this point, it looks like that's what's going to happen.
All right, that's all for us this week. From Unqualified Opinions, I'm Will Beiermann, joined by Paul Heires, and we will see you guys next time.